The first time I saw a six-digit cash balance in my mobile banking app, I locked my phone completely, took a long, deep breath, and reloaded the software interface from scratch to make sure my eyes weren't playing a cruel trick on me. I actually thought I was dreaming. There it was, a clear and indisputable $300,000. I was exactly 27 years old, and the strangest, most paradoxical aspect of this turning point was the undeniable fact that at no stage of my professional life had I ever earned a six-figure salary in the traditional sense. I didn't inherit a single penny from a wealthy relative. I didn't launch an e-commerce startup that went viral overnight, and I certainly didn't make a highly leveraged cryptocurrency trade by chance at 3 a.m. So, how can an ordinary person living on a completely average corporate salary quietly accumulate a fortune of over $300,000 before turning 30? This was never the result of a single dramatic, high-risk financial maneuver. It was a byproduct of the accumulation of 20 small, unremarkable, and almost boring behavioral habits that I repeated year after year. Throughout my 20s, I practiced these choices over and over again until they completely stopped feeling like a painful personal sacrifice and began to feel like my natural self. Here are the 20 specific lifestyle habits that systematically built this net worth, and the first habit on this list is the structural reason why the remaining 19 have even a mathematical chance of working. For much of my 20s, I was systematically saving about $1,500 every month, over a steady period of about 7 years, thanks to the matching contributions from the company I worked for and the quiet, compound growth of global index markets in the background. This predictable stream reached a solid $300,000. The active capital contributions were entirely the result of my own efforts. However, this tremendous exponential growth was a prime example of exactly what time can do when left undisturbed. Every dollar I invested in these accounts stemmed from defensive spending habits that freed up a significant amount of capital that other consumers routinely spent without even realizing it. This journey was never dependent on the amount of money I earned. It was shaped entirely by the percentage of my income that I set aside. To visualize how this process works, imagine that $1,500 each month was put to work aggressively for about 8 years. This process alone accounts for a direct personal contribution of nearly $154,000. The remaining financial difference that safely brings the total to $200,000 has nothing to do with my active labor. It is entirely the power of compound interest. Savings were built through frugal discipline, while growth was achieved by starting early and steadfastly protecting the principal. First habit: pay yourself first and completely hide your capital from your conscious mind. The very next day after my paycheck from the company was deposited into my checking account, an automated software transfer forcibly withdrew the predetermined savings amount from my account. Before my brain could even process the existence of that money, and long before I could quietly convince myself to spend $300 on a weekend getaway. The money was transferred directly to an isolated high-yield savings account and to an investment portal where I deliberately made logging in extremely cumbersome and frustrating. Out of sight, truly out of mind. You no longer force yourself to rely on sheer willpower, which behaves like a limited biological muscle that's completely exhausted by Thursday afternoon. But instead, you trust a hard-coded software system that has already transferred your capital elsewhere while you were fast asleep. I've never actually missed this wealth, which I've never seen disappear from my sight. Habit number 2. Driving the most boring, most reliable, and fully paid-off vehicle on the road. As we entered 2026, the average monthly payment on a new car loan in the U.S. had surprisingly climbed to $780, while the average retail price of a new car exceeded $60,000. A coworker of mine, let's call him Alex, took out a loan for a brand new pickup truck in the same calendar year that we were both hired at our company. Our starting salaries were exactly the same, differing by only a few dollars. While my coworker Alex was pouring $780 of his monthly cash flow into a pile of metal that was rapidly losing value, I was driving a used Honda that I'd bought entirely in cash up front and had maintained without fail for 10 years. This single consumer choice saved me about $750 every month. Alex arrived at our office every morning in a much more luxurious vehicle. I, on the other hand, went to work with a steadfast and more peaceful state of mind. When the loan finally paid off, that pickup truck was worth only a tiny fraction of the total wealth Alex had poured into it. My boring Honda, however, had turned into a savings vehicle on wheels. Habit number 3. Don't miss out on even a single dollar from your employer's corporate contribution program. Make no exceptions. If your workplace offers an integrated retirement contribution program, and you're not taking full advantage of the contribution limit, you're essentially telling your CEO that you'd rather forgo a pay raise. In 2026, regulations limit your contributions to a traditional 401k plan to a maximum of $24,500, and this employer match represents a guaranteed, risk-free 100% return, even before the markets open. Your future self isn't some fictional stranger. Your future self is real, so it's time to put an end to your habit of leaving free money on the table. Habit number 4. Treat every pay raise as if it never actually happened. The moment I received my first pay raise in my corporate career, I let it quietly appear on my bank statement, and then I increased the transfer amount in my automatic savings software by an amount almost exactly equal to that raise. While my total gross income rose, my daily lifestyle remained exactly the same. There's a term used in finance for this alternative behavior: lifestyle inflation. This is precisely the structural reason why individuals who double their income still find themselves strangely short on money. Habit number 5. Keep your monthly housing expenses fixed and never let them creep upward. Housing costs are the single biggest financial lever that almost anyone can control. For several years in my 20s, I intentionally lived with a roommate for longer than my group of friends considered normal. And when I finally decided to live on my own, I deliberately chose a modest apartment with less closet space and a longer commute, simply because the monthly rent was $200 cheaper. This choice saved me $3,800 every year. Habit number 6. Make inexpensive, home-cooked meals a standard habit rather than a form of personal punishment. An ordinary dinner eaten out on its own can unknowingly exceed the $40 threshold. If you do this just 5 times a week, you'll systematically spend close to $600 a month. As a result, my routine has become a very clear, short list of meals that are truly nutritious and truly inexpensive, meals I can prepare in my own kitchen even when I'm half asleep. Restaurants became a deliberate luxury. They were definitely not part of my routine. Plus, I knew exactly what was in my home-cooked meals. Habit number 7. Apply the mandatory 2-day rule to any discretionary purchase you want to make. Impulsive spending is a critical timing issue. To overcome this, I added everything that wasn't a verified, urgent, vital need directly to a digital list and forced my brain, through a self-imposed contract, to wait 2 full calendar days before allowing me to complete the payment. What I discovered was almost laughable. The intense urge to consume almost always disappeared completely on its own within that 40-hour period. Habit 8. Carefully review the subscription services that are quietly draining your accounts. A typical consumer spends between $50 and $70 every month without any effort, simply because of automatic subscriptions. Every 3 months, I systematically reviewed my account statements and canceled all digital services I wasn't actively using. Then, I began implementing a strategy of using my streaming platforms on a rotating basis rather than piling them up. This way, I gained access to exactly the same amount of media content at a fraction of the total cost. 9. As noted in the contract, in cases where a product loses the vast majority of its retail value the moment it's in your hands, buy it secondhand. Think of luxury furniture, previous generation electronics, sports equipment, and professional hand tools. I have systematically purchased nearly all of these items secondhand in excellent condition for a very small fraction of their original retail prices. Paying full retail price for a tangible asset that loses its value instantly isn't about showing off. It's a surefire path to gradual bankruptcy. Habit 10. Immediately transfer any unexpected sources of income to your checking account without keeping any of it there. This includes year-end bonuses, overtime pay, and even cash gifts you receive on your birthday. I've trained myself to have a very clear reflex in this regard. No unplanned money, anything not accounted for in my monthly budget, can stay in my main account long enough to tempt me into spending it. The moment that money hits my account, I transfer it directly to my investment accounts without a second thought. Habit 11. Keep your basic emergency fund in a place that actually earns you a return for keeping your money there. The FDIC has set the current national average savings interest rate at a dismal 0.39%. In contrast, a high-yield savings account is expected to yield approximately 3% in 2026. If you deposit $12,000 into a standard savings account, you'll earn $51. If you deposit the same $12,000 into a verified high-yield account, you'll earn nearly $500 without lifting a finger. Habit number 12. Buy the entire global market with a single index fund and then do nothing for years. I didn't try to pick winning stocks one by one or chase speculative meme coins. Instead, I systematically accumulated low-cost index funds, which essentially hold a microscopic slice of the entire institutional market, and then left them completely, stubbornly, and ruthlessly to their own devices. Patiently accumulating wealth over a 10-year period almost always outperforms a volatile game of chance. Based on the stock market's historical average, your capital will roughly double every 7 years, even if you don't touch it. Habit 13. Contribute the maximum amount possible to your Roth IRA as long as your income bracket allows. As we move toward 2027, tax regulations allow you to contribute up to $7,600 per year to this account, and your eligibility to contribute begins to phase out once your earned income exceeds the $157,000 threshold. You contribute capital, on which you've already paid standard income tax, to this account. That capital then grows tax-free for decades, and when you finally begin withdrawing funds in retirement, every dollar you receive is completely tax-free forever. Habit 14. Use a health savings account, HSA, as a first-class retirement vehicle under a smart legal framework. If you are enrolled in a high-deductible health insurance plan, regulations allow you to contribute up to $4,400 to an HSA in 2026. This account offers a triple tax advantage. The money is tax-free when deposited into the account, accumulates tax-free, and is withdrawn tax-free when used for medical expenses. I paid for minor medical expenses entirely out of my own pocket, left the HSA principal fully funded, and allowed it to grow uninterrupted. Habit 15. Under no circumstances should you roll over your credit card balance into the next month's debt. Not even once, not ever. There is absolutely no such thing as just for this month. In 2026, the average credit card interest rate hovers around 22%, and for many cards, this rate far exceeds 35%. Carrying over your balance means letting compound interest suffocate you. It does not give you freedom in the future. I automatically paid off my balance every month, without exception, by paying the full amount on my statement. Habit 16. Learn to repair an item before replacing it. Modern corporate marketing has quietly and systematically conditioned all of us to immediately throw away consumer goods at the slightest sign of a problem. I taught myself to perform small mechanical repairs, which require a short online tutorial and 15 minutes of focused work. Instead of spending $2,000 on a brand new model, I replaced the lithium battery inside my smartphone for just $30, and I saved a fortune. Habit 17. Renegotiate the pricing terms of your recurring living expenses exactly once a year. Corporate service providers very effectively exploit your personal psychological discomfort to ensure your money continues to flow automatically into their accounts. For this reason, once a year, I would systematically set aside a single afternoon in my calendar and methodically call my service providers to compare competing offers. This single afternoon, I dedicated to customer service calls saved me hundreds of dollars every year. Habit 18. At least once a year, buy something of genuine quality, something you handle every day. Being thrifty does not mean being stingy. Being stingy means buying a low-quality pair of shoes for $25, 3 separate times in a calendar year, because the synthetic soles keep falling apart. Being frugal, on the other hand, means buying a truly magnificent and flawlessly crafted pair of leather shoes that will last a full 5 years and have a significantly lower cost per wear over their lifetime. Habit 19. Track a single macro financial figure, and you need to stop tracking hundreds of micro categories immediately. Every month, I would sit down, add up the absolute value of everything I legally owned, subtract everything I legally owed to creditors, and write this single mathematical result on a clean sheet of paper: my net worth. Instead of getting bogged down in hundreds of micro variables, tracking this one macro indicator, the only thing that really mattered was what kept my mind in the game. Habit 20. Consciously building a rich social life that doesn't require receipts based on contractual obligations. A large portion of today's consumer spending doesn't stem from material needs. It's simply the high price we pay for a sense of belonging. Instead of meeting at luxury restaurants to eat and drink expensive food and drinks, we organized nature walks. Instead of spending $100 per person at a downtown restaurant, we invited people to our home and turned cooking together into a collaborative experience. I completely stopped trying to appear wealthy to others and began to quietly become wealthy in real life. So, I want to take your mind all the way back to that exact moment, the one I opened this breakdown with. Me sitting there staring intensely at a mobile banking application, closing the software, and opening it again because the numbers displayed simply didn't feel real. $200,000 before crossing 30 on an active corporate income that never once touched a 6-figure salary. Except now, you understand the truth. It was the compounding product of 20 quiet, micro decisions made over 1,000 ordinary days when nobody was watching. You do not require an unexpected financial windfall. You do not require a flawless corporate salary. And you do not require a lucky break in the markets to win your freedom. You require a small handful of defensive behavioral habits you are genuinely willing to preserve, even when they feel intensely boring. Especially when they feel boring. Now, if you watched this entire breakdown and felt somewhere in the back of your subconscious mind like you were still missing the core structural foundation underneath all of these tactics, then there is a very natural place for your attention to go next. I have created a complete, masterclass breakdown of total financial literacy that covers exactly that landscape. The systemic truths the traditional school system somehow managed to never teach a single one of us. Every single one of the 20 habits you just evaluated makes far more logical sense once that mathematical foundation is locked securely underneath your feet. Go watch that breakdown first, because the habits are what physically construct the wealth, but deeply understanding why they function is what makes absolutely sure you never give that wealth back to the system.